some firms use these methods because the cost is that they allocate relatively small versus traceable cost. Also, sometimes products are homogeneous products, paper products. Manufacturers use that, agriculture and other commodities firms use that. Okay. Also, when we compare both methods, activity-based costing and volume-based costing, the results in volume-based costing results are distorted because the indirect costs are not proportional to the output. It also creates what we call subsidization of outputs. That means some of the products are overcosted and overpriced. Others undercosted. And we will definitely see when we compare both methods which one is overcosted, overpriced, and which one undercosted, underpriced. Activity-based costing uses detailed information. And that's why a lot of companies abandon this method because it needs collection of so many data. And sometimes they may say it's not worth it. So that information actually comes from the personnel who are handling those product lines. And they have to tell you exactly how much time we spend simply, how much time, how much hours we spend this. But the overhead or manufacturing overhead is known. For example, if the manufacturing overhead is 500,000, no. The question is, under the cost pools of the ABC, these products, how much time you spend, how much hours, how much materials. Those information comes from, collected from the employees who are handling the job in a form of questionnaire. So, okay, what is the premise? What has to happen before you start applying this? Definitely, you have to create a task. That task requires resources and costs money. Also, these are very important terms that I wanted everybody to understand. What is activity in this case? It's a specific task, action, or unit work done, such as production setup, machine setup, those kind of things. Resources is the task itself or the activities. Need is a resource, right? What kind of resource it may be? Salary maybe, supplies, those kind of things, that's a resource. And cost driver, it causes the total cost change. You see, maybe number of hours, number of units produced, there, those kind of things. And I wanted to add cost pool. Cost, which is an aggregate of all the costs associated with the activity, associated with the activity. Under the cost pool, there are several categories, and we will also see those. Okay. ABC terms also that you need to know is the resource consumption cost drivers. This is a measure, and it measures the consumption by resource consumption by an activity. For example, number of purchases, sales, order, those kind of things. An activity consumption cost driver is also a measure of the demand placed on resources by an object, such as number of gadgets used to manufacture a product. So there are two stages of cost assignment. You know, research costs such as factory overhead are assigned to the activity cost. You know, under the cost pools, there are several activities. Okay. And once you assign to the cost pool, activity cost pool, from there you assign to the cost objectives, just jobs, clients, products, and patients. When we also compare the cost assignments, when we compare volume-based or the traditional to the ABC or activity-based method, we have two-stage cost assignments. Volume-based system uses actually factory overhead assigns to the once they calculate predetermined overhead, they will assign directly to the cost, what you call, to the single plant or departmental cost. And then after that, they assign to the product. Where ABC, they assign that to the activities or activity cost pools using resource consumption cost drivers. And then after that, they assign to the costs or cost objectives. What they use is the activity cost consumption cost drivers. So in practice, you will understand this one calculates the difference between the two methods and the two stages. Okay. So now cost drivers, we already talked about it. So let's go directly an application and see how the cost is done in both methods, the traditional and ABC. Let me discard that and this one. Okay, so here what we are looking is the activity cost, activity-based absorption cost, which is ABC. Okay, I need to have point. Go back. Okay, so the activity-based method, just the ABC method, it assigns the cost to all manufacturing overhead costs to products using activity cost pools instead of plan-wide or departmental. When we say plan-wide departmental, who uses that method? Traditional tester. Okay. So we'll be comparing this method to this method. How they assign costs. ABC assigns based on activities, cost pool, cost. Traditional method plan-wide for departmental cost, then to the product or. These are key definitions that we already talk about the activity. What is activity? Then that cost consumption overhead resources. What is the activity cost pool that we already talk about? Is the aggregate of all costs in a package, in which all costs is accumulated relate to a single activity. Okay, and also the measure of that activity, the cost pools activities. What measure? Is it units? Is it hours? How you going to measure? And then after that, the rate. And then you have to assign that rate to the cost, to the activity cost products. Okay, all these steps that we're talking about is needed practically to calculate the ABC. Okay, so here is comparing the difference between ABC and the traditional method, which we already know and discussed. The activity-based method uses more cost. Okay, also includes some tags that are not included in the traditional batch level and product level activities. And then after that, activity measures, that those uses that do not relate to the volume of units produced. Okay. Where the traditional average relies exclusively on volume-related overhead allocation. So these are the difference between the two methods. So let's see how the two methods are different. So let's start number one, the traditional method. And remember, traditional method calculates predetermined overhead rate, okay? Calculates, which is the estimated, this one, yeah, you divide this two together. So this one was 1,520 divided by 400,000 THL, okay? Okay, so total estimated manufacturing overhead rate divided by the total estimated direct labor. And then you get the rate. Once you get that rate, you have to apply to these and multiply those. But these are not going to change. It's going to be the same. And remember, we will need these 50,000, the units that will be produced under the standard and under the premium. Okay, later for the ABC. But the traditional, you only have to find the predetermined rate, and then you just multiply those on here and add them up. That's all. It doesn't take that much time. So remember, these will not change. We will take them the way they are. Okay, we calculated the predetermined rate, 1,520,000 divided by 400,000. It's at 3.8 per direct labor hours. Okay. Now remember, I told you have to bring these two over here. So as we had it. Okay. So under the premium, you have 2 hours. Just to multiply the predetermined rate, it gives you 7.6. Just multiply the two together. Under the standard rate, you have 1.5 hours times 3.8 gives this. So the unit product cost will be 71.6 under the premium and 53.7 under the standard. Okay. So just we done the traditional rate, the traditional unit product cost. We done the unit product cost. Okay. Let's go to the ABC. How different it will be. So remember this 1,520,000 is the same manufacturing overhead under the tradition. All we did was the same amount we assigned the cost. Look here. That information comes from the personnel, the employees who are handling the two products and the premium and standard. They know how much direct labor, they know how much setups, and then they give this information. It has to add up to the total manufacturing overhead cost. And then under the standard, you are using, you have 100,000, under the premium 600 and 140 is given to you 300. These are the units produced. So these are the total of the standard and the premium. So we will need these totals to calculate per unit. Okay. So let's go here. Okay. So brought together A and B. This is the estimated overhead. So remember this one, when we added, it was 1,520,000. So this one is the total expected activity. So 800 divided by 400,000 it gives you 2 per hour per DLH. Okay, direct labor. And 480 divided by 800, it gives you 600 per setups. And the parts administration, 240 divided by 200, it gives me 1,200 per part, per type. Okay. Once I have that, okay, once I have that, what do I have to do? You have to calculate the rates, and which we did here, activity rate we have. And then after that, you have to calculate and assign overhead to the product. So how are we going to assign? So we will separate the premium and the standard. But this belongs to the premium, so you just multiply these two together. This is just the one we calculated, 2 per DLH, 600 multiplied. You have the cost will be 200, 360, and 168 or 168,000. When you add them up, you have 7,280, the total. But that's not what we are interested only. We need to have per unit, okay? And we will find in the next. This is the same thing we did. We multiplied these two together, and we added up. We have 792. Okay. So per unit, how are we gonna get? Please remember, we had under the premium, I think it was 50,000 units used, and this was so bad. Yeah, 200,000 under the standard. Yeah, okay. And this one we have to divide that to this number, and this one we have to divide by the 200,000. Okay, that gives us, when we divided 780 to the 50,000, it gave us 14.56. When we divided 792 divided by 200,000, it gave us 3.9. And then add them up. Okay. When you add them up, this is the unit product cost under ABC. And we have to compare to the product cost under the traditional right now. Okay. Remember, under traditional, we had 78 under the premium and standard 51. Look the difference here. So note that the unit product cost of the standard unit decreased from 53 under the traditional to 51, while the unit cost of the premium increased from 7 to 78. So the activity-based cost contains two non-volume related costs: set up machines, it costs that, and also parts of administration. That's one of the things that brings the differences. Okay, the activity-based method assigned these products in a way shifted costs from high volume product to low volume product. So that's how you can actually calculate and compare the two methods. Okay, based on that, if you compare both methods, the traditional and ABC, and then you're trying to price, no wonder why a lot of companies are losing money if they use the traditional method. But the question is, why fewer companies use ABC? To answer this question, let's do another example, and that will illustrate every single. Let's stop this one and for distributing profit. Okay. I want to look this problem right here. Okay. So this problem Trampoline produces two models of trampoline for backyard fun. The original and recently introduced deluxe. The deluxe model introduced several safety features that were intended to scare overly protective parents to upgrade. Since it is production, or in this sense, it is introduction, the deluxe model has been increasing in sales. But at the same time, the company's profits have been declining. No wonder why it was declining. You know, the sales are increasing and the profits are declining. That has to be a problem right there. So the CFO believes that the company's traditional costing system may be to blame. And the reason why they are losing is because they're using traditional methods. Currently, the company uses direct labor hours as the basis for applying overhead. The company estimates that it will incur $600,000 in overhead costs in the next year. So that is the 600 manufacturing overhead. Okay, let me okay. So this one, 600, is the manufacturing overhead. That's the total overhead. And remember, we calculated that total overhead earlier. Okay. Okay, let's go on. The following cost date is known. So direct material under the original 50, under the deluxe 75, direct labor 20. But here, let me also. So if the direct labor 10 per hour, and we have 20 hours, right? How many hours are there? So 20 divided by 10 is 2 hours for the original 2 hours. And here 30 divided by 10 6 hours. So just go backwards a bit. Okay. So remember that 20 hours times 2 hours times 10. That's what it is. So we should know that. Okay. So CFO wishes to explore an activity-based costing method, which we are given this information. Okay. And the question is, under the traditional method, cost method, we have to predetermine the unit cost for each product. Very simple. We just did that. So if we calculate right now the predetermined rate was the total manufacturing overhead is given to us 600,000 divided by, okay, total labor hours. Okay, where we can get the labor hours. Okay, so the way we get the labor hours is 700,000 units is right here. Okay. 700 units is 7,000 units, I mean. Multiply the 2 hours, that gives me what? 14,000 hours. And then this gives me 2,000 times 3 hours. That gives me what? 6,000. Okay. So if you add these two together, gives me 20,000. Which actually that is the case here. See, that is the case right here. 20,000 is right there. Okay, so when we are calculating the predetermined, you just have to divide the 20,000 right here. 20,000. Okay. So 600,000, when you divide that, it would be $30. The rate, $30 per hour. Dollars per hour. So we did that predetermined rate. Now the question is, how are we going to calculate the cost, determine the unit cost of each product under the traditional? And we also did something like this earlier on there. Let's see if I can. Okay. So what we have is the standard. Okay. The standard and the deluxe, direct labor material plus direct labor plus manufactured overhead. Okay. So direct material is given to us, so we can bring it from here, right here. So direct labor, direct material are here. Are here, right here. Deluxe is right here. So we will take 50, 20, 75, 30. Okay. Let's have that 50, 20. 50. So, work. Okay, the standard was 50, 20, and the other one was 75 and 30. Okay. Right there. Okay, then how are we going to get the manufacturing overhead? You remember we calculated the rate 30. Okay, so multiply the hours. So if you multiply this one under the standard of the original, be 2 hours times 30. So that gives me 60. Under here, 2 hours. No, this one is 20. Sorry. No, it's 10. 25. Okay, 2 times. No, it was 3 times 30. So that is 90. So if I add this together, I will have 195. And this one I add together, I will have 130. Okay. So we calculated both the first part. We calculated the predetermined. We calculated determine the unit cost of each product. So we done under the tradition. So let's do the under the ABC. What do we need to do under the ABC? We need to do is compute activity number I. compute the activity rates for each activity. Okay. And then after that, we have to determine the expected utility cost. And then we have to compare both answers A and B, the tradition and the ABC. Okay, that's what we have to write here. Okay, so there are several things we need to do for that. Here we have to calculate the activity. Here we have to calculate activity rate. And is one of them apply. Okay, so now activity rate, how are we going to calculate that? Just the way we did that, 100,000 divided by the total, that will give me 100,000 divided by the 20,000, the total of the standard and the last under here will be 5 per THL, PLH. Okay, 200,000 divided by 4,000. This one 4,000. Okay, gives me $50 per recording. Receiving a report. Okay, and then 300,000 divided by 1,000, that is 300 per test, right? Test. Calculated that. And when we multiply this 5, multiply this to the 14,000, 5, this 5, okay, so this, when you multiply that, how much you gonna get that? It would be 5 times 14,000. That gives me here 70,000. Also, under here, I have to have MOH applied. So 6,000 multiplied, this one multiplied by 5, this one. So that gives me 10,000 here. Okay, 50 multiply 2,000, that gives me 100,000. Okay, and this gives me 50 times 4,000, that gives me no, 2,000. I mean 50 times 4,000 multiply this. So that gives me 100,000 also. Okay, multiply 50 this one, 100 multiplied by 5. Okay, 300 multiplied 200, it gives you 60,000 here. And 800 multiplied 300 would be 240. 200. And now we have to add all these together. So this one you added in the 3,070. 370,000, and this gives me 280,000. So that we calculated is the total overhead cost. We are interested material plus labor plus MOH per unit, and we will divide by the number of units. So number of units is given to us. So under this one, the number of units is going to move a little bit. Uh-oh. Okay. Now, so the 230, you divide this 230. You have to divide the 7,000 units. And where that 7,000 units came from, okay, let's look here. It's given to us down here. Right. Okay. So 700 units is for the original, 2,000 units for this. So what you do is you come over here and divide this 2,000, 230,000 divided by 7,000 units is how much is that? That gives me 32.86, right? And this one, when I divide it by 2,000, it gives me 185. 5 per unit. Okay. The other one was also per unit. So we calculated per unit. So now we have to create the activity cost for the ABC. Okay, let's do that. Base, but I will make sure that I use baseline for the base. So the activity base for number B, let's have S, let's have D, direct material, direct labor, plus MOH, which is manufacturing overhead. So this information is already given to us, 75, 30, 20. We just calculated the MOH for each of them. This was 32.86. This was 185. Add this, it gives 29. This gives you 102.86. Okay, so we calculated those. So number C tells us compare and comment on your answers from A and B. When you compare that, we can see the standard under the traditional you have 130 for the standard under the traditional. Here you have 103. That means under the traditional costing standard units are overcosted by 27.14. And the lax units here, when you compare to the other one was and under the tradition was 195, here 290. So under the deluxe units are undercosted by 95. So that is what it means. Traditional method, when you compare to the ABC, creates overcosting and undercosting. Now, the last question we have to answer is if ABC produce more accurate cost data, which is true, it produces the more reliable costing method. So why is it not more widely used? Why companies are not used? Well, as I said earlier, it needs more details, more time. And for that reason, a lot of companies assume that it's not worth it. Okay. So I think here you go. You have both methods. What I will do, I will post this example and other examples together in a one sheet. I just wanted you to also practice, and then I will have an assignment later. All right. You have a wonderful day.